There we go. Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Happy Friday. My name is Meg. I am part of Power to Fly's virtual hosting team, and I am so excited to be joining you today for this amazing chat with the amazing Lovee from Pluralsight. Now, before we jump in here, I just want to go over a couple quick housekeeping items for y'all. Here, let me share my screen. There we go. Okay, so what we're going to do, so I'm really excited to be hosting with all of you today. And before we jump in, I would just want to go over a couple real quick housekeeping items for y'all. So like all of our virtual events, today's session is all about participation and it's about you. So we want to make sure that our attendees, our community members, everybody comes and spends time with us. We want to make sure that the time that you spend with Power to Fly is well worth it. So if you'd like to participate, help make this event more interactive and personal, please feel free to. You can do that in a number of different ways. You can turn your cameras on if you'd like, no pressure. You don't have to be Insta perfect. Some of us are on, I think, day 3 of a messy bun. So, you know, furry coworkers, non-traditional workspaces, all of this is very much welcomed and encouraged. We just want to make sure that we meet you where you are. So if you'd like to do that, you can, no pressure. If you would like to come off mute and participate that way to add a question, ask a question or add a comment, you're more than welcome to do so. What we recommend is, or something to know is that if you do come off mute for whatever reason, you will show up on the live recording and the live stream of today's session. So whether you have your camera on or your avatar displayed or whatever, that's what will show up. If you have any kind of privacy concerns, that's okay. You don't have to come off mute to participate. You can also message me, you can put your question or comment into the Zoom chat. Hi, Taylor. Thank you for the comment. That's lovely. And don't worry, Taylor, you'll get a recording to this like we're just talking about now. So you can always message the Zoom chat. I'll be hanging out in there, grabbing questions to bring them up for Lovee. But if you have, serious concerns or a question that you, for whatever reason, you want to ask, but you want to remain anonymous, not a problem. You can always just DM me. You're going to DM that Power to Fly chat and learn. That's where I'll be able to see your messages there. So please feel free if you would like to ask a question or add a comment, but don't want to be kept anonymous. Now, like I did say, this session is being recorded. We are currently recording and live streaming to our YouTube channel. So this session, everybody that registered today, whether you actually showed up, maybe you had a last minute conflict and so you couldn't join us. If you joined for 5 minutes and then leave, join and come back a bunch of times, or if you stay for the full 60, no matter what, everyone that registered is going to get a link to rewatch this recording. It'll be in an email from Power to Fly in about 1 to 2 business days. So you'll get it next week. And it'll lead you to where this recording is housed on hosted on our powerfly.com website. Now, if Lovee says something today that is just so amazingly mind-blowing, you cannot wait to share it with a friend or a coworker or a relative, you don't have to. You can always navigate over to our YouTube channel, like I talked about earlier. I'll throw the link to that YouTube channel here in a little bit. But what you can do is you can run over there and you can always grab the recording there. It'll be posted usually within about 5 to 15 minutes of the end of the live stream. And you can, I greatly encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel there. It's a really awesome way to make sure that you don't miss out on really great resources and chats like this. But you can also keep up with us on other social media channels. We are at Power to Fly on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, as well as YouTube. And we share all kinds of information there about resources from our blogs or upcoming events or interviews with hiring managers, our Meet the Recruiter videos, all kinds of stuff like that. It's always free, and we would love to help share these resources with you. And if you are new to the Power to Fly community, please feel free to let people know that you are learning and spending time with Power to Fly. You can take pictures or video as we go. You can always share them out on social. If you'd like, please tag us so we can share the wealth. We really want to expand our community so that more people are aware of these really, really useful and free resources that we offer. So please feel free to do that. So one of the things I want to highlight before we jump in and introduce you to our speaker is that Lovee is here on behalf of Pluralsight today. So I'm sending you a link into the Zoom chat right now. This is a link to where if you follow that link, you'll see their company page, Pluralsight's company page on powertofly.com. Now it's going to look much like what you're seeing in front of you right now. I think actually the open jobs has now climbed to 167 open positions, so that's great. But one thing I want to highlight for you here is the company page is where you can go to get more information on the company, check out events like past recordings of past events they have that Pluralsight has done with us, or you can also see upcoming events that Pluralsight will partner on with us. So please feel like, check those out, especially if you're really curious about what Pluralsight, has had going on or will have coming up in the future. And then obviously you can always click on the open roles or open jobs tab there. That is what most people come here for. And so you can also, you can search Pluralsight's open roles there. There's a bunch of really great functionalities on the site. Now, if you are, if you're here today and you learn a little bit about Pluralsight and you want to learn more, whether you're actively job seeking or not, if you are interested in Pluralsight, I highly recommend that when you navigate to this page, on the upper right-hand corner, there's going to be a big pink button that says follow. It's super important to click that because it's going to put you on their follow network. And basically what it's going to do for you is act like your friend at the company. It's going to keep you on Pluralsight's radar so that they know even before you fill out an application that you're interested in working with them. And it's also going to keep Pluralsight on your radar because it's going to tell you when they post new roles. So if you are actively job seeking, this is a great tool to utilize. If you are not actively job seeking, but want to make sure that you keep Pluralsight in mind, I highly recommend it. And especially if you're actively job seeking, but don't see anything listed that Pluralsight, for Pluralsight that really speaks to you. So if you just don't see a spot for you right now, I highly recommend you follow them so that way you don't miss out when they post new roles. Now, I'm really excited to introduce you to our speaker today here on behalf of Pluralsight. Lovee Garg has been at Pluralsight for just under 3 years, and she's passionate about enabling and empowering teams there. Working at Pluralsight offers the perfect platform to contribute and make a difference in an area that she strongly believes in, making technology skills accessible to everyone. So welcome, Lovee. We're so excited to have you with us today.
Oh, thank you, Meg. I'm really excited to be here as well.
Is there anything else you'd like to add to this information about yourself before we dive into questions today?
No, I think this is good. It's perfect. We can dive in.
Okay.
A lot to cover. So.
Yeah, excellent. So last but not least, I just want to highlight for y'all, these are some of the principal themes that we're going to try and cover in today's conversation. Now, it's important to look at these because what we did is we compiled these based on the questions that y'all submitted when you registered for this event. But we also want to make clear that if you join us today and you took time out of your day to be here for the live recording, you get first priority. So if you have a question and you're not sure if we're going to ask it, regardless of whether you submitted it or not, please feel free to ask. Especially if we're talking about your question, we're discussing that and we're not getting the right take on it, you're more than welcome to give us some more context or let us know. You can do that obviously by audio or by chat or by DM. And you can also just feel free to really direct the conversation today. If Lovee says something and you're unclear about it, or you'd like to go into deeper detail about her answer to a specific question, please feel free to let us know. You are more than welcome to interrupt me if you'd like to come off mute to speak. Just do your absolute best not to interrupt Lovee or if one of our other attendees is already speaking. The other thing I do want to recommend to everyone is that if you are not actively speaking, I suggest that you remain on mute. You can check your settings now just to make sure that it's set up correctly. But the reason we suggest this is because it helps eliminate background music and keeps the call clear for everyone, as well as for our recording and live stream. So like I said, we're going to try and talk about how you can confidently communicate your ideas. We're going to discuss some ways to give others opportunities to grow into leadership. And we're also going to talk about some of Lovee's tips for networking and mentorship as well. So with that said, I'm going to jump into our questions for the day. So please feel free to let us know if you agree with what Lovee's saying. Like I said, I'll have my eyes on the chat box this whole time. So please feel free to communicate with us there if you'd like. All right, so just right off the bat, we're going to start with kind of a big question. This person had written in asking, what is your number one piece of advice for young people to set themselves up for leadership opportunities in their careers? And I think this is something a lot of people wonder about, because when you're getting started, you're trying to tread water, you're trying to get up to speed, and it can be really hard to manage that, let alone really take time for that long distance and long range thinking and planning. So what would you recommend as your best piece of advice here?
Yeah, definitely. This is a great question. So we all wonder, and there's misconceptions about, leaders are born or leadership cannot be taught. And that is not true. You can learn to be a leader. And I think one thing is, do not view leadership as a job, right? It's really a way of thinking. It's a mindset. You might even say it's an art, but it's really a shift. It's about how do you pull yourself forward and those around you to really become successful, right? Reach your mission, whatever goals you set out to do, how can you collectively do that? So it's about not just about yourself, but about all around you. And, it's leadership opportunities are present everywhere, whether it's at home, whether it's at school whether it's at you just starting out in your career, you have to seek those, right? And I feel like we shouldn't wait for the opportunity to be handed to us. If you see there's a gap, there's a need, like just go for it. So that's my big advice. Like, don't wait for the opportunity to be handed to you. If you see one, step up, take it, and don't think of it as a job. It's really a way of being.
I love that perspective. And you're right. It is one of those things that seems kind of common sense maybe, but you're right. It's hard to understand why you're not getting opportunities if you're not thinking of the fact that like people can't help you to get where you're going if you don't tell them where you're trying to go. So you have to be, clear and maybe not transparent, but like make it clear, like what your aspirations are, what you're trying to work towards. Because even if these people, that you meet and work with can't really like give you that boost or pull you up the ladder, they might just be the person that's going to help you gain the experience and skills that you need to keep moving up in your career. And maybe they are the ones that are going to connect you with the people that you'll need to advance. So I absolutely love that advice. Really, really look for those opportunities and then make it clear that you want them. I like that. All right. So what advice would you give to someone who always gets praised for good work, but is never rewarded for it? This person says that they're in a male-dominated industry with no female leadership in the organization. And I know that I've experienced this in the past and had no idea how to handle it. And so I just sort of went full ostrich and had my faith in my supervisor that someday that promotion or whatever would come. But I felt weird, like chasing it or asking for it or like kind of making myself a pest to see what was going to happen and keep the progress moving forward. So have you had to deal with this? Do you have any, I know how I shouldn't have done it, but do you have any insight on ways you've done this successfully?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we as women encounter this on a regular basis. And this is something I'm still working at, right? This is something it's a constant, it's a process that you're constantly thinking through and learning. And as you move in your career, it changes, right? So I think it's really important for us to advocate for ourselves, right? I think if you just wait, I've found that if you're just waiting for something to just happen, it doesn't happen, right? And you could be waiting for a long time. So it's really about getting outside of our comfort zone and asking for it. You want something, you ask for it. If you feel you are doing something, you've accomplished something, go with that example and be clear about what you want, right? What is it that you're looking for? Is it bonus? Is it a salary bump? Is it a promotion? Like, what is it that you're asking for and what is the outcome, right? So be data driven, go with it. And yes, step out of your comfort zone, be an advocate for yourself, because if you're not an advocate for yourself, like no one else will be, right? So you have to start with yourself, and it's not comfortable. It's not comfortable for me either, but we have to do it. We have to constantly try to advocate for ourselves. So be very data driven and just show and be clear about what you want.
I love that approach, because you're right. It is much easier said than done to say like, okay, I'm going to advocate for myself. You should advocate for yourself. I tend to think of it in terms of like, if my friend, like my best friend were experiencing this situation, what would I tell her to do? What treatment of her would I say is normal and she should accept versus what treatment would I push back against to be like, no, they shouldn't say that to you. Because for me, at least, it's a lot easier to like fight for my friends than it is to fight for myself. It seems selfish and less,
Yeah.
less like being a team player, but that's not really the case, right?
No, it's not. And you're right. I think it's very easy for me to tell a friend or a sibling or anybody in my circle that this is what you should do. But when it comes to me, it's very hard. So I think it's something that we have to really step out of comfort zone and be. And when you put data in the mix and just like quantify it, it becomes a little bit easier. And the
I
more
think
you try it, the easier it gets.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, because if you are, making a case and you're supporting it with facts, right? You're supporting it with data, statistics, things that back up your argument. It's a lot easier to defend that or to feel confident in, what you want and what you deserve than it is to sort of position it on like, well, I deserve it. I've worked so hard. Like general sort of statements like that, true as they might be, are probably not going to sway someone, especially if this is a pattern of behavior, right?
Yeah, it's really about demonstrating, right? Um, and I will tell my direct reports as well, if you're going for a promotion, like really showcase your work, right? Where are the examples? How have you demonstrated? So you can get that promotion. So, and
Yeah.
that's applicable to me too, right? As
Yeah.
we grow.
So Taylor is in the comment section here and had a really great point. Taylor says, I'm a pro at advocating for other people, but what are some steps into starting the conversations for advocating for yourself, especially when it comes to professional development? And I thought this is a really good thing to point out because it sounds like from the original question asker, it sounds like this is a pattern, this is established, and it's one thing to try and, change your habits or set those new boundaries when you go someplace new. But it might be it's especially it seems, I think, a lot harder to do so when you are trying to change existing patterns in a place you've been for a while.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so there's multiple facets to it. It is important to change existing patterns even in the place you're at, because it's going to benefit you and everyone else around you. If the conversations never happen, then there's no awareness that that's a problem. And then how do you address it? I think what works for me in terms of advocating for myself is being clear about what I want, because if I don't know what I want, I have a very hard time quantifying it, right? I can go to my boss and be like, well, I would like to do something more that's cross-cutting. What is that, right? Like, what is it that I'm trying to gain from that experience? And what is my end goal? So kind of like thinking through what is it that you want? Because really it is about you at the end of the day. And then having that conversation. So I think the clearer you get in terms of what is your end goal, reduce the ambiguity, the conversations become easier. And whether you're at your existing workplace or you go to a different place, that mindset shift is needed.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if I answered your question, but I'm happy to elaborate.
I think so. I mean, and please, Taylor or whoever submitted the original question, please feel free to push back if you'd like to dive in deeper on this. But yeah, I think you're right. It's definitely it's an uphill struggle. It's not going to be something that's comfortable. But honestly, at least personally, sometimes just like acknowledging that the situation is uncomfortable or you're not quite sure how to proceed might be the way to go. Now, granted, that vastly depends on what your relationship is like with the coworker or the supervisor or whoever that you're dealing with. But I've had a lot of luck just with saying like, hey, I'd like for us to have a conversation on my job title and promotion options. I'm not really sure how to start that, and I feel really awkward like asking about this when I don't already know of any potentialities. Can we talk about this and kind of explore the subject a little further?
Yeah, actually, that's very true, Megan. A good point. One thing I've always done in my entire career, if I want something, whether an opportunity is there or not, I've let my leader know that this is what I'm interested in, and I ask people to report to me the same thing, because then the idea is in your mind, right? It's there. So if an opportunity arises, they might think about it.
Yeah.
If I know of something that's happening, I know somebody who's interested in it, right? So I can be like, wait, I know someone. So I think it's kind of like speaking, asking, never be afraid to ask whether the opportunity is there or not, and advocating. So it just starts the conversation. It gets easier from there.
Yeah. Well, and plus, I mean, they can't think of you in terms of like, oh, so-and-so might be a really great fit for that if they have no idea that's what you want to do.
Yeah, because oftentimes you're like, well, I think this person is good, but I'm not sure if they're interested. They've never expressed, like those kind of conversations and thought processes happen as well. So it's better to just, put it out there.
Yeah. And to Taylor's point about professional development, that's another point where you can, like Lovee said, fall back on those facts and statistics, especially when you're trying to get professional development that would be directly applicable or even, kind of transferable to what you're doing now. You can say like, hey, can I get some more training in this because it'll help me do this part of my job more, more quickly or more efficiently. I could handle these projects a lot better if I had training in this area. Can we pursue that? Yeah, I absolutely love that. All right, so I kind of wish I'd remembered to ping this at the beginning of the chat, but we got a really interesting question and I loved how it was phrased. So this person had asked, what do women or underrepresented genders need to do to be treated fairly for salary and promotions? And I meant to flag this at the top of our chat because yeah, we're coming from, and especially Lovee's, experience probably is just limited to being a woman in the working world of, mainly dominated by men. But we do need to acknowledge the fact that, just as much as there is a gap in a gender gap in the workforce between men and women, there's also a whole host of people that do not fit into that binary that also are in the same or similar positions as women when it comes to being underrepresented, feeling like they don't really have a lot of power or authority, or kind of like agency in the workplace. So it is really important to highlight that. So thank you to whoever wrote this question. I really loved having that pointed out. But Lovee, what do you think, people who do feel like they're at this kind of power imbalance, what do they do? Could they be doing to be treated fairly for salary and promotions? And I know it sucks. We can't just like change the system, but until we can keep eroding at that system, what should we do in the meantime?
Yeah, definitely. I'm going to sound like a broken record at the end of it, but again, it's being comfortable advocating for yourself and negotiating, right? It's not everybody's comfort zone. Some people are good at it and some are not. And it's something that we have to learn all the time. And again, if you feel that it is not fair, right? The salaries, promotions are not being done in a fair way, then it's about collecting the evidence and the hard data and having that tough conversation, like, why? And it's not about, it's hard not to compare, but it's really not about comparing. It's about what is the criteria and what is it, do you fit? Do you have all the qualifications? Are you doing those? Like kind of like really highlighting that. And then advocating for it, right? And again, this is again boils down to raising awareness, right? Is your organization aware of this disparity, right? How do you raise awareness and then advocate for it? But again, just having facts go a long way.
Okay, so just to clarify, do you mean that we should focus on our own qualifications and say like, I meet all of the practical requirements for blah, 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 or should it be a combination of here's all of my stats and why I am a good fit for this versus whoever got it?
Oh,
like
no.
I have 8 years more experience, that kind of thing? Or like you said, should it be a comparison or should it just be, here's why I am good for this role?
Yeah. It shouldn't be a comparison, right? Like we shouldn't compare. Everybody is different and everybody brings something different to the table. But I think if there is a disparity, then it's really highlighting where is the disparity and why is there disparity? And then maybe creating some standards, right? What is the criteria so that we can use that criteria fairly across the board?
Yeah, absolutely. Is it fair, or is it appropriate, I should say, at least in your experience, because, the answer to this question, I think, can vary a lot. Would you think it would be appropriate to, once you've laid out your case, if you've been told like, well, no, so-and-so is getting the promotion, or no, we're going in with this person's idea or whatever, is it appropriate or okay to to just ask like, hey, could you break down for me like why this is better, or could you kind of tell me what I need to improve on so that the next time that this position becomes available, I'm more qualified, or I'm better prepared for it?
Absolutely. I think it's a great conversation to have with your leader. Like if you are looking for a promotion and let's say you don't get it, it's important to have that conversation. Like what, where did I miss? Like what are the gaps and how do I skill up? Like you always have to be thinking about skilling up. And what's important also is skilling up is important because you want to be ready for the opportunity when it does arise and not wait for the opportunity to arise and then skill up, right? So you always want to like grow your skills and grow. But yes, you always want to have the conversation, because if you don't have the conversation, you won't know what the gaps are, and then you don't know what to address.
Exactly. Okay, so we had a lot of questions that were very situational, right? People writing in with kind of what they're facing, and I thought this was a really interesting question, because although the particularities might kind of pigeonhole it or focus it in one area, I thought the question was pretty applicable across the board. This person said that it's down to like the leadership gap between in representation between men and other genders. And this person said, I recently inherited a very young, globally distributed team. They are very burnt out and underperforming due to terrible communication from their previous manager, who's a man, and this person self-identifies as a woman. Do you have any tips for encouraging and improving performance while still letting them know that we have a long way to go to reach baseline performance? The former manager is also now my boss, so it's important to be diplomatic about the changes needed. And this person sounds like they're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place, but what would you suggest to them when it comes to, kind of trying to encourage improvement and drive, better results from this team?
Yeah, definitely tricky one. And I've worked with globally distributed teams, so I can empathize with part of this. So I think that there's two parts of this, right? There's the strategic and the tactical. No matter how much a team is underperforming, or how behind they are, or communication, there's always a positive, right? There's something good. So I think what you want to do is take a look at what is the positive and highlight that and showcase that. And then perhaps an opportunity here might be to think about, okay, here we are here today. What is the 6-month or the 12-month or long-term plan, and where are you trying to get to? And then talk about the very positive attitude, like changes you might want to implement in order to achieve that goal. So it's about what got us here is not going to get us there. So kind of using that positive outlook in trying to spin it in a positive way. And then from a tactical perspective, there's lots of challenges that can have that people face in globally distributed teams. It could be not having proper communication channels set up, skill gaps, like not enough training. And so identifying those problems and then, prioritizing and tackling them one at a time.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Okay, we did have a great question just coming in the chat. And apologies if I butcher your name. I'm trying my best here. Rizalin had asked, have you ever shared your honest opinion to senior leadership and received backlash? I've been afraid to bring up my passion for DEI in both interviews and in the workplace. I've had senior leaders perceive my comments as not being in line with my job description or company goals. And this, I feel this hard, because before I got to Power to Fly, I worked for several companies where it was everything but printed in the handbook that was not something they cared even a little bit about. So, have you ever had this situation happen where you try and share honest feedback and it blows up in your face?
I guess I've been a little bit lucky there to not have that happen to me. And I've been fortunate enough to work at companies where, we are trying, Pluralsight is a big advocate for diversity and belonging and equality. And, we do a lot of programs in-house as well to just, generate awareness and make sure we are all equipped to do our best. I think, so I could try and answer the question, but I haven't had that happen to me. I think one thing I would say is oftentimes, if an approach is not working, you could try a different approach, right? Because when we say something, someone else is perceiving it a different way. And maybe there's an opportunity here to really step back and think about, okay, this approach is not working. Maybe I try a different way, right? Because clearly it sounds like it's turning, it's not being received in a way that you want it to be received, but you're getting backlash for it. So maybe there's there's always multiple ways to solve a problem. So you could try a different approach.
Yeah, I like that. And actually, I'm really, thank you, Rizlan, for this, or Rizlan, for this, this question, because it kind of highlights something that I know we talk about a lot, but it always kind of bears repeating. When you are interviewing with these companies and you're asking these questions, you are interviewing the company just as much as they're interviewing you. So if you ask a question about, like, what are your DEI practices like, or do you have ERGs? Listen to the answer, but also the attitude of the answer. Are they excited that you brought up something that, they need to be working on, but they're not yet? And so it would be an opportunity for you to maybe like start an ERG for, a group that you identify with. Or are they treating this like, no, we don't do that here. And I know that there's a lot of people that are in a position of enough privilege and resources that they can make these, make hiring or make, not hiring, I'm sorry, make employment decisions based on these, issues like this. And there's a lot of people that don't have that luxury. So it is important to recognize that. But if you think that you don't have this luxury to even ask the question, I wouldn't agree with that. You can always ask it. If you need to ignore the answer because a paycheck is a paycheck, and Lord knows I've done that many a time in my career, because life is life, you got to deal with it. But if, you can always ask the question, and it's, you can even phrase it in a way of just honest curiosity. If you don't like the way their answer is, but you're going to need this job, okay. If you are comfortable with taking a mouthful of just ridiculous garbage and saying, smile, say thank you, and swallow it, if that's what you want to do, that is fine. Again, I have done this on multiple occasions. I don't love it. I really resent the fact that I had to, but it's what I had to do. So if that's the situation, it is. If you feel comfortable saying something in response, then go ahead. It's all about your safety and your comfortability there.
Yeah, 100%. We have ERGs, and luckily, ProSite is a company where we'll have town halls or meetings. We'll often have our ERG group representatives come and present just to generate that awareness. So it's always good to have that conversation. And yeah, that's a great point, Meg, about starting an ERG.
Thank you. All right, so let's look a little bit here. Let's see. Okay, so the next person is kind of highlighting this. They say, I'm the sole economic support for my family. What is the right way to communicate that I'm eager for challenging work and career advancement, but only within normal business hours due to childcare constraints? So I liked this question because it raises the issue of caregiving and how traditionally that is something that falls to women in, generally speaking, in either dual parent relationships, most heteronormative relationships. So even though it's not obviously applicable to everyone, in a lot of ways, this work falls on women, and it creates and adds to a lot of the gap that you see between genders in the workforce. So have you had experience with this, or is this something that you've seen other people have to struggle with?
Yeah, actually, I'm a single parent myself, so I can really empathize here. I'll share what works for me, and hopefully that helps. I'm a big proponent or advocate of always stating what I want, whether I'm going to get it or not. So I've always been that way. Well, not always. I think it took early few years of the career wasn't like that. And at some point you get it and you're like, you know what, I'm going to ask for what I want and at least let it be known. So it is hard. And the first time that you think about, I want to do something more challenging, the question is, will I be able to do it? And how am I going to manage it all? And you know what? It actually works out because you've at least tried. And then you know what your boundaries and what your limits are, what you can and cannot do. So I always will go for it and I'll try it. And then if it doesn't work out, then there's, you fall back, you tone it down, you cut it down, right? But give it a shot. Like, don't let it hold you back. And the other thing important here is to set boundaries. I always let my leaders know just what I'm comfortable with, what my situation is, right? And what are my time frames where I'm not available or that I might have to do something different. And so, set boundaries, set expectations, and have some agreements in place in terms of like what's going to work, and just go for it, because otherwise you won't know. And the other thing is time management, right? Time is finite. There's only so many hours in a day, and we cannot add any more. So, you kind of become efficient at time management as well, which is a good strength to have in today's day. But yeah, I'd say go for it and set boundaries. Like, it's hard, but once you start, you realize like, you can do it.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that with us. We also had a follow-up question from Rislin or Rislin, again, apologies, y'all, asking if you feel anxious or deal with a lot of workplace stress, and if so, how you deal with that chronic stress at work, especially in a fast-paced environment. And I like this question because, it's a lot, as much of like, the work of caregiving and family obligations, that kind of thing falls to women. There is also a huge component of this also happening in the workplace, right? You kind of get tasked with a lot of things, and tasks get pushed onto your plate and that kind of stuff. So when it comes to dealing with that stress, it does seem, largely like there's a lot of it going around for women. So has this been your experience?
So I'll start with Pluralsight. So Pluralsight is very big about, ensuring that we give our 100% to wherever we are, right? So maintaining a work-life balance. So when we're at work, we're giving it 100%. When we're at home, we're 100% there. And we understand that it's not always the case, right? Like, it's not always balanced. And actually, to the previous question as well, we have to be comfortable with it never being perfect, right? There'll be good days and bad days and ups and downs, and that's okay. It's part of life. But I think I have had in prior work lives, stressful situations. What works best for me is you have to realize that work will always be there. Stress will be there, and don't let it creep into your life. Don't let it take over, because that's it, right? That's really bad. So I think what's important is really identifying what is the most important thing, prioritizing it, and tackling it one at a time, right? Otherwise, it just becomes a lot. And then, take breaks. I like to go for walks. I listen to a podcast or read a book or just doodle something to get your mind off, right? And come back fresh. But it's really important to not let it consume yourself. Like, do something fun for yourself in the middle. Whatever is that activity that's going to energize you, like, take time to do that, because it's about your well-being as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much for specifying that. Sometimes it's a lot easier to take in that information or take in that advice when it comes from somebody outside of ourselves or outside of like our friend group, our families. But you're right. That is a very important point to make, is that you can't be good for other people. I think, what is it? There was like a Red Table Talk line like several years ago. It was basically about like, you can't be the caregiver for everyone else, and you can't support other people if you don't take care of yourself first. You can't get water from a dry well. So make sure that you are taken care of so that you can be that support, or even just be that support for yourself. I love it. Okay, so we had another question about more focused on the idea of that gender gap, especially within leadership. This person says, I've worked in the architecture and engineering world for a long time, and while I've been pleased to see the gender gap continuously shrink, the 2008 economic downturn created a giant generational gap. Even if companies wanted to place more women like me in leadership, they just aren't out there. And it's getting to be exhausting to always be the female example. How do we address all the underappreciated and overused, burnt out trailblazers who managed to get into leadership? And I love this because I feel like we talk about trailblazers in a like very honorific tones, and like, so it's appreciated and that's great, but the focus so quickly then shifts to the people that come after them. So what is your opinion on this question? How would you suggest we start reaching out and start supporting those people that put in so much work and maybe just don't want to be that example? They don't want to be held up as that paragon.
I think this is a tough one, right? Because it is very situational and circumstantial, and it's one of those areas that cannot be changed overnight, right? We have to invest in it. to change it. And on the flip side, there's probably a lot of people looking at the person who posted this question as a role model because they have achieved something something really good, and there's a lot of people who want to achieve that as well, and it's not easy. I can empathize. I think this is a tough one, and maybe I think what we probably want to do is see how can we encourage others, how can we create opportunities so that the trailblazers are not the only trailblazers there, right? We can help cultivate others and create opportunity. Yeah, this is a little tough one, but I think maybe we're not going to be able to solve this problem for us, maybe, but we can definitely use our experiences and make it better for the next generation. And I would focus my energy there personally.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I would use whatever opportunities or perceived safety or power or whatever you think that you have gotten from these trailblazers, or you think that other people, like, let's say you don't identify with that demographic, you can always highlight those accomplishments and be grateful for all of that, like those opportunities. But then you should, if you can, do something with it. So, not only supporting the people that are in that position now, but maybe stepping up to also, take on some of that leadership example, step up and say like, hey, I wonder why we don't have, more women at our C-suite level. So-and-so's been there for 15 years and it's been so great to have that representation, but why is there not anyone else moving up? Maybe if what's really getting kind of burnt out for these trailblazers is still having to be the only in the room, even though, because for however many years it was just a diversity quota, right? Butts in seats. You needed to say that X percentage of your business was women or was people of color or whatever. But yeah, as much as you can, are able to have the resources, have the safety to do so, stepping up and trying to either shoulder some of that example leader burden or ask the questions that maybe these people are just tired of asking. If they come from another source, then you start to see that there's more people that support it instead of just that one trailblazer. So yeah,
absolutely. And tapping people on the shoulder. Oftentimes people don't even think about that, they can.
I love that.
Like, just ask them, hey. Yeah.
So we're going to save about 5 minutes at the end of the session to talk a little bit more about Pluralsight as a company, and what the culture's like, that kind of thing. But we have about 10 minutes left in the session. So if you have questions that you'd like to ask, please make sure you get them asked before time runs out. I am seeing some really great chatter happening in the Zoom chat. Eleonora had said it's great to kind of cultivate a culture within the organization you're in. Eliana says a very interesting topics all the way through this chat. Women always have to fight harder than men to receive the same working recognition, and it's unfortunate that that's a fact. And it absolutely is. It's like the first time I ever I had close working relationships and what ended up being a close friendship with a Black woman. That was the first time I'd ever heard of the Black tax, was when we were talking about, she was like, yeah, I have to do all this extra work. And I knew it was likely a thing. I'd never heard it named before. And it was so infuriating, just because, I feel like a lot of white America was living in a happy bubble thinking everything was fine as long as you were not actively being a terrible person. But it's high time we kind of strip away those misconceptions and those ignorancies. And so yeah, it's unfortunately a fact, and the more we can do now, then the less that people are going to have to do after us. So make it better for yourselves just as much as you make it better for the people that follow in your footsteps.
Absolutely.
All right, so this person had written in asking if you recommend any leadership certification programs. They say, I'm worried that relying on organic growth from real world situations I experience in my career will leave large holes in my leadership skills. And I agree, like this, you can gain real great world experience, but if that's the only thing you're utilizing, you might have skill gaps. Do you agree with that?
So yes and no. So I personally think organic growth, there's certain skills that are best if you hopefully you don't have to face certain situations, but if you do face them, the learning is tremendous, right? Let's address the certificate programs first. I think that's a very personal thing. For example, most universities, colleges will offer some kind of leadership training programs. There's a lot of consulting groups that'll do the same as well. I think what it boils down to is really thinking about your career and where do you want to get to. You're here, and what is the next step for you, and choosing a certificate program that's going to bridge the gap, right? Because there's already things you're learning at work. Those are things, they're things that you are experiencing and learning. You have your leader, you have your peer group, you even have your direct reports who are helping you grow and be a better leader every day. So that's one. Second, what is it that you're not going to get organically to that? There's also books, podcasts. Harvard Business Review publishes great articles you can read. And again, these are all tools in your toolbox that you can use. So yes, if you want to do a certificate program, I would really say where do you want to get to, and focus it there.
Yeah, I like that. And actually that really, kind of makes me think of your answer to one of the previous questions about professional development. Is, if these are skills that you want to utilize, regardless of whether you plan to utilize them at your current, in your current role or at your current organization, asking about these things and about leadership, I love Lovee's suggestion to start with, what resources you can find. But it's kind of like when we talk about people like pivoting to a new career, you don't want to throw a whole bunch of money at the problem to start with, on trainings and stuff that you may or may not need or may not really help you. So utilizing, kind of the free resources that you can find around. We have leadership chats a lot. I'll throw in a link here in a little bit where you can check out some of our past chats on those leadership skills and upskilling and that kind of thing. But yeah, you can also, if you find a program that you think will be good and it costs money, ask it, ask it HR, or ask, your manager about, corporate sponsorship for these development programs. Cause it's, like we talked about those facts, it's really easy to say like, hey, having these leadership skills will make me more open for hiring, advancement opportunities within the company, or I can better lead the team that I'm a part of right now, or better support my manager in their leadership. So yeah, definitely, keep that in mind.
And I just add to that, right? So when you are looking for your next role or just growing, what goes a long way is a real world example of how you handle the situation. So that's very important as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lovee. So Eliana is in the chat again saying, when you see a woman colleague trying to get a promotion through an unethical way, like flirting with her employer or being like overly friendly, how do you deal with this? Should you flag it or just ignore it? And I think this is a really interesting question because it highlights in a lot of ways the fact that it's not, my friends and I refer to it as the misogyny is coming from inside the house, where you see people that just are perpetuating all of this BS that we're trying to get past. And at the same time, the idea of this like overarching like patriarchal value and worth system that we unfortunately still operate under, it wants to pit us against each other. It wants us to be fighting and infighting of, you can't do that way and blah, blah, blah. Like, and that's not to say that you shouldn't, that unethical behavior is okay because a woman's doing it. That's not the case here. But I like how this touches on that idea of trying to fight against these things, but you end up fighting someone who should be on your side, or you both should be feeling like you can rely on each other as opposed to having to like cut each other down or point out these problems. So obviously we've had a lot of conversations that are like, it depends, and this is a big answer. But what is your opinion on this?
My personal opinion is, I would flag it because it's all about fairness, and it's about what is the company culture and what is the organization that you want to work at and be a part of, right? So it's really larger perspective. Like it's, especially as a leader, like that is not okay. It doesn't matter whether it's a woman, a man, whoever it is. I think it needs to be fair, and you want to create a very healthy work environment, and that is not a healthy work environment. So I personally would flag it, at least have a conversation and see what's going on. just because, there's what are you setting up? Like, what message are you sending becomes really important here.
Now, just to clarify, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Just to clarify, when you say that you would flag it, I also agree with this. But when you say you would flag it, do you mean like talk to the coworker, like the colleague about it, or would you flag it to, to like HR or whoever is, especially if it's like a mutual manager, would you then go, to the person above them? How would you pursue this?
Yeah, I think this is so it's not a straightforward answer because it really depends on situations and it's on your own comfort level. It's always better to have I feel like going to people ops or HR is a last resort because that changes the dynamics and conversation significantly. Can you address the situation by having a frank conversation with your peer or really understanding, because oftentimes it could be perception and how it's being perceived, right? Just have that conversation to really understand what the situation is and get to the bottom of it before you take the next step. So I think, again, this is a tricky one to answer because, really is very contextual and how you handle a situation is very different. But I think—
Sorry, can I just say something about
Yes,
this matter?
please.
Absolutely.
This was her question.
Yes, exactly. Because I've been through this situation and the person who did this and they got a promotion and I did not because they were flirting with this person, but they did not do it in a very obvious manner. What can you do there? You can't really go against the system because if you want eventually to get a promotion, you would look like you are basically the bitch, if I can use that language, that you're pointing out or who you are, you're going to say that about me. I'm not,
Yeah.
I don't know what it was not that obvious, but that person was for what I saw was also that we had a Christmas party. These people get too close together. Then they denied it. And then this girl suddenly, without having less qualifications than me, she got the job and I did not get that job. And she suddenly used to get a lift from this guy every day at work. I can't question why he would give her this list. This is not my business. That's why I found this a tricky, me flagging it. How am I going to flag it? They may say that it's none of my business just for something like that because I don't have a true evidence about it, if you understand what I mean. So it might
just be down to the way you ask the question. And Lovee, please tell me if you agree or disagree or have a different perception. I would think it would be down to how you start the conversation. So like, I'm trying to think how I've never had to do this in like myself, but I know of friends who have. And I think the way they had handled it at the time was to go to the person you thought was doing the flirting and ask, don't be confrontational, ask it in open
because it's none of my business at the end of it.
Like, hey, it seemed like this was happening. Am I misreading the situation? And if you are, or if you're not, especially if you're not misreading the situation and
you are not. I was not at all.
Yeah, no, it might be worth just following up and being like, can you tell, like, would you share with me why you thought you had to do that? Like what the situation was that you thought that was the only way to do this? Because if the situation exists, we all shouldn't have to do that. Yeah. And so somebody should talk about the situation. And if you make it more about the issue of getting a promotion, having to do these things to get the promotion, then it's less about, I don't think you earned this, and more about you should have to do this.
But you can't say to the person, I don't think you earned this. I don't have any right to say that to the person, because I'm not the person who's going to give the position to them. I'm just a colleague.
I would ask it of the colleague is what I'm saying. Like make it non-confrontational and come at it from a perspective of coworkers. So it puts you on the same team. And even if you want to do like rely on like sisterhood of the traveling pants kind of thing, some people are much more open to that than others. But if they're not, you could just do it as, as coworkers.
As a coworker,
Because if you lead from a place of empathy and assuming the best of people, you sort of paint them into a corner, because if they're determined to act like a jerk or be like, no, it's what you have to do, and you're just jealous because you tried to flirt and it didn't work and blah, blah, blah.
Exactly.
They have to make that step. They have to take a huge step out of that nice corner and into jerk territory. And you haven't done anything.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good.
Great question, Eliana. That was awesome. Thank you. I'm on fire. You've had two really good ones today, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay. Unfortunately, it does bring us to the end of time, but I'm so glad we got to address those. Before we jump here, I just want to go back in and share the, oh, hold on, I did it again. Here we go. Sorry, I'll try to like figure out where my controls are on an iPad is not real fun. So I'm going to share my screen, and what you're going to see here is some questions that we posed to Lovee prior to today's session about Pluralsight's company culture. So I want to talk a little bit about some of your answers here. You said that you would describe the company culture as empowering. Can you kind of expand on that idea a little bit for us?
Yeah, definitely. I think Pluralsight is a place where we all, it's that harbors creativity, right? It encourages you to think outside the box, come up with solutions, to collaborate, right? So it's not about seeking permission to do something, but it's like, yes, because, at the end of it, collectively thinking outside the box, collaborating creates the best product, the best team, the best culture out there. So that's why I think empowering kind of covers a lot of concepts for me. And, it's hard. One word is hard because, that you can think of various things, but I think it's a very empowering culture. Like I've never had to think twice about an idea that I want to bounce off someone or, execute on, because it's, let's do it. Let's try it out. Let's experiment.
I love that. It's so helpful when you feel empowered to do these things and make these choices. If you're not constantly operating from a place of, oh my God, I'm going to have to defend this, they're going to, cut it down. Being in a position to say like, well, why don't we try this? Is so it's so much more of a healthy and dynamic work environment. It feels so much more productive and more healthy. Yeah. All right, so let's talk about your favorite part about working at Pluralsight. Now we get the people answer a ton, and it makes a lot of sense because these are the people that you spend a large portion of your life around. So I totally get the part about people. Let's talk a little bit more about the genuine commitment to making a difference, because I feel like this is something that people might not necessarily associate with an organization outside of UNICEF or people that are like absolutely pro bono or within like let's talk a little bit about why you said this about Pluralsight.
Yeah, we we are very, so Pluralsight, the genuine commitment is when you talk to people, you can sense that everybody who's there is there to make a difference, right? They're always eager to collaborate. They're always like eager to share ideas. And it's not about, oh, I'm going to hold this to myself. I'm not going to share it with you because I need to get to the finish line first. It's about, yes, great idea. Let's work on it. We are very mission driven. And so it comes from a good place.
I love that. All right, so let's talk briefly about some of your top tips for someone who is interviewing. Now, are these Pluralsight specific, or are they just based on your personal experiences, or are they kind of both?
Maybe a little bit of both. I think personally for me, interviews are bi-directional, right? Like the company is assessing your skills as much as you are assessing the company, right? Do I want to work here? What is the culture like? Who are the people who are interviewing me, and what are their answers? And we touched upon it a little bit earlier about asking the D&I questions and things as such. So it's really interview should be treated as like bi-directional. Mm-hmm. And I think what's really important is being yourself, right? And being curious. So come prepared, ask great questions, right? It shouldn't be one-sided. And again, it's not. At least for me, it's not about having all the skills. So you look at the job description and you're like, yep, check. I have all these skills. It's not about that. It's really about what do you bring to the table? Where can you grow? What ideas, like what are you as an individual bringing as well?
Yeah, totally. I like that kind of looking at it in terms of where are you going to fill holes in their culture or in their needs or in that department that they might not even see. And so I love that idea of really kind of being curious about where you might fit, as well as being curious about the company. I love that. All right, so up on the screen right here, you can see the website for Pluralsight if you'd like to go directly to their page to check out their career opportunities. Obviously, there's probably many more than what you'll find on Power to Fly. We're adding new roles there daily. But one thing I do want to highlight is, because we get asked this question sometimes from people, if you want to apply via Power to Fly, awesome. If you want to apply via Pluralsight, that's okay too. That's totally great. If you apply via Power to Fly, there is a little bit of extra follow-up that we do on those applications to kind of like make sure, like, hey, I saw like 4 people applied for this job last week. You know, where are they in interviews there? Or where, you know, where are they in the process in that way? So that is definitely a big help that we do provide. However, we don't, you know, we're not like headhunting firms. We don't take a cut of your salary. We don't affect, you know, your likelihood of getting the job. You know, it's not like that. So please feel free, if you do just apply via Pluralsight, let them know you came from us, only because we know that we have the best community members. Like, we have the best and most talented people in our organization, in our community, and we want to make sure that Pluralsight knows that. So please feel free to apply any way you'd like. Obviously, we do suggest you apply because, you know, everything we've learned about Pluralsight from our speaker today has just been amazing. But, you know, Lovee has shared so much cool stuff with us. So I'm sure y'all will want to go to apply. So hopefully you will. I'll share the link again in the thread here to where you can go to also visit Power to Fly or Pluralsight's company page on powertofly.com as well. Lovee, is there anything that you would like to say to the audience before we break today?
No, I guess thank you for attending and listening, participating in this session and the opportunity. So it's great, and good luck.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And you know what, I completely echo what Lovee said. You know, these events are so amazing because of our attendees. So thank you all for these really excellent questions, both pre-submitted and during the event. It was really great. And I just want to extend a huge thank you to Lovee. It's not just the hour that you see up here. There's all kinds of work that goes in behind the scenes to make these events happen and make them as wonderful and as engaging as we try to make them. So I just want to say a huge thank you to you, as well as to Pluralsight for lending you to us for the afternoon. It's been wonderful to spend time with you today.
Thank you, likewise.
So we'll leave you with that for today. We've got a ton of great chats and sessions happening next week. And don't forget, our mini summit is coming up September 20th to the 23rd. I put in information on there in the Zoom chat to where you can register. The focus for this upcoming summit is mid-career pivoters and early career joiners. So if you are in either one of those categories, please feel free to join. If you're not, you can always come anyway. That's just the subject matter focus. And we hope to see many more of you join us in the future, either for our mini summits, upcoming chat and learn and virtual events, and much more. Have a safe and happy weekend, and good luck with the rest of your workday. Hopefully it goes quickly. And we can't wait to see you soon. Bye.